Joel Klatt joins us each week courtesy of MyBookie. MyBookie.ag, code next round. They will match that initial deposit 50% up to $1,000. MyBookie.ag, code next round. Klatt with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline in a sweet Fox Sports hoodie. What is up, Klatt? How are you?
Yeah, I know. I swagged you guys. You sent me T-shirts and I didn't wear them, and then wore the Fox Sports one. Man,
yes. I'm an extra large in that. I don't know what size Lance and Jim and Rockstar need.
I'd definitely be an XL in that. So.
Okay.
We're announcing the opening game
Lance?
of USFL.
No.
Yeah, I'll take an XL too. Thank you.
Oh, okay, just 3XL. I didn't. You got it. Well, listen, on the way. And yes, are they doing the USFL soon?
They're making the announcement today, April 15th, the home opener for the world champion. Can you call them world champion?
Yes.
The U.S. champion, Birmingham Stallions. They're going to open up
Galaxy champions.
April 15th against the New Orleans Breakers. So, I mean, when the Breakers and the Stallions get together, man, hold
it's
the
a barn
phone.
burner.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, if you do have that game, it would be your fourth best game of the year to date so
far.
Wow.
Shot at Klatt. What a setup.
I mean, more a shot at the schedule.
Yeah. Are you doing the Victory Bell Saturday night?
We're doing USC UCLA.
Well, that's the Victory Bell. Oh, yes. All right. Yeah. Klatt gets a good game.
So they moved you to prime time? I mean, the real other prime time?
Where prime time is wherever I'm at.
That's right.
Hey, you know what's funny about that game, though, Klatt? And, as a guy that is a USC fan, the worst thing that could happen to USC, because I think the UCLA is the better overall team, is coming off that loss. I don't know how they lose that game. And by the way, I did an on-air bet with these guys Saturday night, a very valuable body part that I put on the line when they were down 14-0, because I was totally convinced until the ball hit the ground with all zeros that UCLA was going to win that game. We talked about it last week. I thought UCLA had a path to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
They lose that game. Now they're underdogs to USC, and there's a good chance Pac-12 is going to be completely wiped out of this next weekend.
Well, the Pac-12 just can't have nice things, guys. I mean, like they just. But like if you actually, all right, if you step back and like all joking aside, right, the issue with the conference is two things. One is that the elite programs in the conference are not elite, right? And have I done the player discrepancy with you guys? Like the difference between USC and Alabama or Georgia is basically the exact same difference between USC and FAU, right? So like the top of the Pac-12 from a talent perspective, right? The talent composite, a player rating perspective. So the top of the Pac-12 is not as far away from the middle of the Pac-12 as what you have in the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC, or maybe even this year with TCU in the Big 12. And so what ends up happening is it becomes harder for the best teams to just go unscathed. Then you compound that with something that like it is an issue for some of these conferences. And this is not an indictment. So this is not a SEC Big Ten. This is not an argument against any particular schedule makeup. I'm just stating as a fact, it's very difficult to go through one of these conferences that play 9 regular season conference games and a championship game. In fact, of those conferences, so the Pac-12, Big 12, and the Big 10, there's only been one team so far go unscathed through a schedule like that, which was Ohio State in 2019. And we know that team with Fields and Chase Young and the like, they were an elite team. Now, they didn't make it to the championship game. That was a good playoff, by the way, with Clemson and LSU with Burrow and so on and so forth. But takes an elite team to do that. The next year, in that funky COVID year, Bama did it in the SEC. Maybe in hindsight, the most impressive college football season that we will have ever seen. However, they didn't have to face, the full throat of road games in that year. So I think that will look unfavorably on them in terms of history, but they went through unscathed. And I believe that they played 10 SEC games and then a champ game, if I'm not mistaken, that year. Is that right, guys?
Correct.
That's right.
Yep.
10 SEC, okay. A championship, Notre Dame, and Ohio State.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, but think about how elite that team was. They won every single offensive national award. Heisman, Biletnikoff, Doak, Unitas, Outland, if I'm not mistaken. Like it takes an elite team. Well, if you don't have that elite team, you're going to slip up at some point. Even Oregon at home, even UCLA at home. And so it begs the question, like, are they scheduling to win championships? Or are they scheduling to squeeze out of the media sponge every last cent they can possibly get out of their media deal? And the answer is the latter. They don't schedule for championships. And because of that, you get what you have here. And they were oh so close to owning the college football landscape or narrative for a week for the first time, guys, in close to a decade, maybe since Mariota era. They were about to have 2 matchups of top probably 11, maybe even 10 teams this weekend. And then it all blows up because of Arizona. I'm sorry. What just happened right there? And then you couple that, and the third that I'll say, and this does not apply to Oregon because that's a great environment. But when you play at the Rose Bowl and you can't fill it, like, that's tough. You don't get the benefit of having like an exquisite SEC road environment.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
That's
Jimmy,
right.
you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I do.
Tough to win at Arkansas and Missouri.
Yeah.
Tough.
Hey, on display this past weekend too. I mean, look at Georgia. They had to go into Starkville. Yes. Now I don't know. I don't understand. What you guys do at Fox. I know LA is huge in the television world. USC, UCLA. That is fantastic prime time. I'll be dialed in. But your old slot, the Big Noon Kickoff, has a meaningful game this week with TCU, a slight favorite in Waco against Baylor. TCU offensively, maybe not their best outing, but everybody doubted this team in every week, but especially this past week. They were going to go to Austin. They were going to lose. Everybody was counting on it, and they didn't. They controlled the game from the beginning to the end. This team doesn't look like it's going to lose. They're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what we have to start wrapping our head around. And by the way, I think up to this point, and I've argued that they needed to be ranked higher after the initial round of rankings, and I still believe that. Now, there was an element of Cinderella to this team, in my estimation, up until last Saturday. And this was a team that I was like, man, this is a great story, but this defense is not going to be able to hold up, right? They're not going to be able to beat Texas at Texas, Baylor at Baylor, win a Big 12 championship game. And now after last week, I'm like, okay, they showed me another shot in the bag, right? You know how when you play golf with a guy and you're like, oh man, he's pretty good, but he doesn't have all the shots. And then all of a sudden he just like pulls off a shot. You're like, okay, well, that's interesting. He's got that shot too. That's exactly what happened on Saturday night with TCU. I knew that they were really good on offense. Even if they didn't play great on Saturday night, this is an offense that is very potent. They've got quality NFL-style players. Maybe not at quarterback, but I think Duggan is a really good college quarterback. He's obviously resilient and tough and gets the job done. But they've got an NFL back in Kendre Miller. They've got an NFL wide receiver in Quentin Johnston. Their O-line is veteran. Tough, physical, big. They can run it, they can throw it. And so I was like, okay, like they'll be all right because of their offense. But man, I don't know about that defense. D. Winters was suspended for the first half because of an ejection for targeting. And then they go out there and they give up 3 offensive points, under 200 yards. Bijan Robinson, I still think is one of the better players in all the country. 12 carries for 29 yards. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, so they took what they've done in spurts as a defense and applied it to a whole game. And now we have to start wrapping our heads around. And I know that this would probably, in your part of the country, make people's heads explode. Like, TCU's probably going to go to the playoff, guys. They're the best team now in the Big 12, and it will take an upset for someone to beat them here in the next 3 games.
How do you view, Joel Klatt is with us. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, and he is with us courtesy of MyBookie.ag. MyBookie.ag, code next round. They will match up to 50% your initial deposit all the way up to $1,000. MyBookie.ag, code next round. And I trust me, I hesitate getting into the let's assume this happens and this happens and this happens. But how do you view a one-loss non-conference champion Tennessee to a one-loss conference champion TCU? Let's assume they do drop a game. They can still win the Big 12. Do you think that's enough to get them in front of Tennessee?
I don't know if they'll need to, right? I think that both of those could go in that scenario.
Okay.
Because who's the third?
Well, we're counting on the Michigan Ohio State loser still being in. At least I am.
Well, no,
Okay.
I mean, no. In that scenario, Georgia is in, Ohio State is in, TCU, Tennessee, yeah. So I mean, it would just be determined. I guess I was asking if it did come down to those two.
If it came down to those two, well, first of all, I don't mean to disparage the question. I don't see how it comes down to those two.
All right. If you want to move on to Lance's question, just say it and we'll move on to Lance's question.
No, but I've always argued, and I've maintained this from the start, 8 years ago until now, is that I would always honor a team that won their conference championship over a team that didn't. And I know that everyone, pounds the table and it's like, we want the 4 best. Well, listen, I'm not enthralled with a beauty pageant. I'm not enthralled with figure skating and gymnastics. I want to honor the scoreboard. I want to honor championships. And so I would honor TCU in that scenario. I don't know who the third is for sure that they would have to have that argument. See, because to me, there's really only 8 teams, really only 9, I mean, at the most, that have a shot at the playoff. And the teams that I would put on the outside looking in would be like a USC has a path, I guess Clemson and North Carolina, but let's be real honest. I think Notre Dame ended the ACC's chances because they're 3-0 right now against the ACC, including that win over Clemson. We've been over that. So do you get what I'm saying here? I know that I'm hemming and hawing. Yeah. I think that TCU as a 1-loss champ and Tennessee as a 1-loss would go. And in that scenario, I think that the debate would be more about TCU and the Big Ten loser of the East. As I'm just playing it out in my mind. Like, I think Tennessee has a great shot of going. Them and Georgia, I would be shocked if both of them are not in the playoff.
So I said this earlier. It's not breaking news. You can be a great coordinator and an average head coach. Steve Sarkisian is 11-11 now in his second year overall at Texas. Brent Venables is sitting at 5-5. I know it's year one, but Brian Kelly's in year one. Lincoln Riley's in year one. I don't know. I mean, are these the guys that are going to be the long-term fix at Oklahoma, Texas?
Man.
And now they're going to the SEC.
Point. Well, no. I mean, I think that the move to the SEC hurts Oklahoma drastically. And we could I'm sure we could talk about this for a half hour. This is a program that has built themselves on conference superiority. Think about it, right? They haven't won a national championship since 2000. Before that, it was back until the mid-'80s. So you're talking about well over 35 years with only one national championship. So what have they built their entire reputation on? Winning the conference. They owned the Big 12. And because of that, like a swath of the country, including big parts of Texas, was available to them in recruiting. If you don't own the SEC, aren't the other teams that now also have access to Texas going to start chipping away at that recruiting base? The answer is yes. Now, to your question about assistants, coordinators going to be head coaches, it's always a risk. I mean, it works with a guy like Bob Stoops. And at some point, you've got to get that chance. Dabo Swinney wasn't even a coordinator and then all of a sudden becomes a head coach. I think that we want things too quickly. It's a microwave society. We want teams to be good and ready to go right away. That loss for Texas was disappointing. I do think I'm going to give Brent Venables at Oklahoma a bit more of a pass. The only reason being is they lost everything, right? I mean, the roster was pretty decimated. And I know that their fan base screamed and kicked and yelled about anybody that would disparage them, like, we're going to be fine. Well, maybe in the long term, but this year was always going to be difficult for OU. We were all tricked against Nebraska, but remember, Nebraska was so bad that even Gus got sick. So we should have all known something was up. Something was amiss in the air that day.
But Kansas has got a better record. Kansas has got a better record.
I still think that they'll be all right. I hear you. I think it's really tough. I am really impressed with these guys that have gone in and done it in year one. Brian Kelly is doing a heck of a job. Although, my goodness, you're not supposed to beat Alabama at home and then play that game. Arkansas is not good, guys. I'm sorry.
But it was on the road.
Dunaway, you can tell me they're in. Oh,
it was on the road. And there was frost on the ground.
Didn't hurt Liberty.
And there was frost on the ground.
Didn't hurt Liberty.
Yeah.
That's true.
See,
that's a good point.
By the way, the frost on the ground. This is why we need the second round in the expansion on campus.
Right.
No, I agree. I agree with that. I've always wanted that.
Well, I mean, if you do want, not the best team to win, if you want weather to play a factor,
whatever.
absolutely. I do have a serious question here at the end. I am as a guy who enjoys the entertainment aspect of football, I love all gas, no brakes, Dan Lanning going for it on fourth down there. And
I thought it was awful.
I love Lane Kiffin going for it on fourth down. It's entertaining, but as a guy that knows the X's and O's of what's going on, how much coaching malpractice was that of Dan Lanning with $1.24 to play in the game going for that?
Well, and then Kalen DeBoer was like, "Hold my beer, Dan. Watch this. I'm going to throw it around and not take any of the clock." I mean, the coaching malpractice at the end of that game was bad. Now, if Nix is in the game on that fourth down, I kind of understand it because that is their MO. That's the way that they play. But with a backup quarterback, the defense is not going to honor any type of zone read. So at a minimum, you should get in and sneak it, right? So not only do you not sneak it, which is what you've done successfully all season long, you put your backup quarterback back there in a post-snap read situation in a shotgun short yardage. I hate it. So I hate the play call. And I don't love the decision because it was a tie game. You're giving them the ball in scoring territory, field goal territory, right there, and they don't have to earn it at all. So I thought that was a horrendous decision. But then Washington starts throwing it around and not taking any time off the clock. And I'm just like, my goodness. Then Oregon fakes a cramp. Then there's the illegal touching. The whole game was drunk at the end. By the way, at the end of the Arizona-UCLA game, another horrendous decision made by a coach. It's fourth down, I think, and 5, so they could still get a first down for Arizona late in the game, inside of 2 minutes. At the 6-yard line. They're up by 3. They kick the field goal. Do you understand that the only way UCLA can win the game is if they touch the ball?
That's right.
Why would you kick the field goal and give them the ball? See, even if you fail on the fourth down, now they've got to go 94 yards to beat you. You kick the field goal and then kick it off. They returned it to the 28. So I'm sorry, like 72 yards now to beat you with the same amount of time on the clock. Like, what are we doing, Jed Fish? You had the game in your hands on the 6-yard line. You're a road dog. Go for it on fourth down. Even if you fail, they've got to go maybe 95, maybe 97 yards in order to beat you and stick it into the end zone. Was he really concerned that they were going to gain 70 yards and kick a 52-yard field goal to tie him? Like, who cares at that point? So I thought that was a horrendous decision as well. These coaches, man, they get paid so much money. How do they make these decisions? These decisions are egregious in some cases.
If Jeff Saturday can do it, you can do it.
Let's go, baby.
You could.
Hey, don't the Buffs need a coach?
Yes, badly.
Yes.
Would you take the job?
No. No. And it's not because of the program. I love what I'm doing. You mean to give all this up?
Exactly.
Sit in my own office on a Zoom with you guys on a Monday
who
morning?
doesn't? This is the dream of the American dream right here. People come across the ocean to do this. USC
This is what dreams are made of.
at UCLA in the Rose Bowl, 7 o'clock, Fox 6 for the big primetime kickoff Saturday night with Gus and Joel and Jenny. Thank you, Klatt. Have a great week.
You guys are great. I appreciate it. Have a good week, okay?
How about you too, Klatt, with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, presented each week by MyBookie.ag. MyBookie.ag, code next round. They will match your initial deposit, 50% of it, up to $1,000 when you sign on at MyBookie.ag, promo code next round.